Hello. Hello. Oh, hello, Rich. Hi. How are you all? Hello. This is the golden microphone. It feels pretty cool to be using this. Several tellers tonight will be using the golden microphone to tell stories. Thank you all for being here tonight. We're going to celebrate and honor and be grateful for the work of Dismas House. I know we have some people here who are volunteers, supporters. This is an amazing organization, and we are honored at Storytelling VT to be part of this evening with you and to celebrate the work that you all do. And we're going to have Alec come up, and he's going to say a little bit. He's a volunteer. He's going to say a little bit about Dismas House. So please welcome Alec.
Thanks. Nice microphone. Yeah. Thank you. I like the golden microphone. So this is, I'm nervous for I'm nervous for many reasons, but I'm sitting 15 feet away from two of the house directors of the Burlington Dismas House. So it's an honor to be here with them, and thank you all for coming, and Colin and Jen for doing this work. Burlington Dismas House provides a home for people re-entering the community after serving time in prison. It's also historically been a place that students and former prisoners live together, and we've been that connection has been coming together again recently here in Burlington. I was trying to think about how to explain why some other volunteers and I were thinking about trying to connect like the storytelling community with the Dismas House community, and besides just like they're cool people who should know about each other and hang out, I couldn't really come up with much. But I really think it's that, and I know this is trite and cliched, but I don't feel bad about that because I'm old and I don't let cliches bother me anymore, but it's that at Dismas House really is about second chances and really knowing that no one is just one story. No one is just one label and just one experience and just one thing that we did. And I think people in this room know that too. So we'll say more. I think Richard will say more a little bit later about Dismas House, but that's what it is. And have a great time, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Alec. We are also lucky to have RETN here tonight, who will be filming our tellers. Can we get up for RETN? They do amazing work in the community. So our stories tonight will be between 6.5 and 7 minutes at most. At 6.5 minutes, you'll get a chime from our co-founder, Jen, and the chime sounds like, wait. Wasn't that nice? She's been doing that for 6 years. You'd never know it based on those first two. That was at me. That was just at me. That was an angry chime. At 7 minutes, when you've hit your time limit, and we'd love for you to wrap things up, you will hear a double. There you go. Okay, you get it. We're looking for stories tonight that are true, that are first person, that happen to you, and are on this theme of second chances. So we have stories that are related to the work of Dismas House. We also have stories that are just what inspired the tellers when this phrase second chances entered their brains. So we're excited to bring our first storyteller up tonight. Let's practice making this person feel welcome. Let's give it up nice and loud for our first teller, Owen Foley.
My name is Owen Foley, and I'm a failure. I feel confident saying that now. There was a time in my life I wouldn't be able to admit that, because I wasn't always this way. There was a time long, long ago where I wasn't a failure, or at least I didn't view myself that way. I'm not saying everything went right, but I did just enough to get by. I coasted through high school and first couple of years of college. I didn't really fail at anything, because anything I wasn't good at, I just wasn't interested in. So I couldn't invest in anything that pushed me beyond my comfort zone. But eventually, when I got into college, it caught up to me, because I would fail tests or classes, and I could write those off for a little while. I could ride the idea of being a slacker or the lovable drunk guy because I went to a tiny campus where everyone kind of looked out for each other. I coasted along with the bare minimum 2.0 average for 5.5 semesters. But then one day, tragedy struck, and I got a 1.944 average. And when you don't meet the minimum 2.0, you are cordially invited to study elsewhere. And it was a challenging moment for me personally, because I'd never faced any sort of intense obstacle like this before. And I sat down and I made a list of what I could do with my life. I could move to South America and fake my own death. I could try to get a job with my uncle's crane company. Or the least appealing of them all, I could continue living in the frat house where I lived and go to the state university across town. Unfortunately, that was the one that I chose. It kept me rooted a little bit, kept me in the same place, and did not require extensive planning about explosions. And the state school was a big difference from my past situation, where I was literally a big fish in a small pond. I was all of a sudden lost amid a crowd of 25,000 students. Tolstoy used the line, "A grain of sand in an ocean of humanity." And that's how I felt, just lost. The thing that had defined me, the education, the friends, the culture for those past 3 years was all of a sudden gone, and I was adrift. I'd never been that way before. And eventually I found out that that's not always a bad thing. I fell into a routine of being able to meet new people and to try new classes and try new things in general. And it didn't matter if I failed at something, because I had already had the ultimate failure. It didn't matter that many of my friends from the previous school looked down on me because I couldn't make it through, because they weren't worthwhile to me anyway. People who supported me stuck with me through whatever failures I had. And I decided that I wasn't going to try to return to my little school and my comfortable little program and that comfortable little life. I was going to go on and do something interesting. I was going to get a degree in molecular biology, followed up with a PhD in molecular biology, so I could find a nice, comfortable college campus where I could teach anything that they would hire me to do, because PhDs are very hard to put into application. But I coasted through that semester there, doing the same amount of work that I did at my previous university. And I found out that instead of getting a 2.0, I was getting a 3.9. So not all classes are equal. And it tripped something in my mind that maybe I really was smart. So I figured, why not? Why don't I apply to get back into my chosen program, the one that I always wanted to do? Just on a lark. If not, there is plenty of academia left for me. And I got in. I decided I'll go back. I'll give pharmacy another shot. And I went back and everything changed. I became a diligent, focused student who was on the dean's list. That's a complete lie, I'm sorry. I went back and I coasted along at a solid 2.5 GPA, because now I discovered the benefits of having a buffer. But while I was there, I took chances, and I went out and I tried to meet new people, and I tried new and interesting things, because I was a failure. I always knew that. Now I just had to pick myself up and learn from them. So whatever I tried that I wasn't good at, I could overcome that. And eventually I graduated a year late. It cost me, according to some little back of the envelope notations, including tuition, lost income, student loan interest, right around $170,000. But it was the absolute best investment that I've ever made. because I'm no longer a one-trick pony. I'm a failure. I'm okay with that, because it's not about the number of times you fail. It's about the number of times you get up. And I'm really grateful for that lesson. Just wish it would have been a little bit cheaper. Thank you all.
Keep it going for Owen Foley. So nice to hear your story, Owen. It's so cool. You are smart, by the way. You're a very smart man and funny and charming. And it's so cool to see what you have done and yet to hear that part of your story as well, because you are a failure, like so many of us at many points in our life, right? I mean, it's amazing that the common experiences that we have are often those things that we keep to ourselves. We think they make us unique, but they make us just like everyone else. A lot is happening. We are going to bring up another storyteller, and then we're going to hear from one of the co-directors of Dismas House. So first, we're going to bring up Peter Burns. He's a longtime storytelling VT favorite. Please welcome to the stage, Peter Burns.
I'm so happy somebody mentioned Tolstoy. That happens so seldom here at Storytelling Vermont, and just made me feel great. I have read War and Peace. Anyone else? War and Peace? Anna Karenina? All right. It's a literary crowd. When I was in college, I spent hours and hours walking through the English countryside. Certain phrases came into my head and stuck. The moving black dot, the grinning idiot, the heat of history, wander with turf cutting instruments. Shortly after moving to Burlington in 1980, I decided to become a performance artist. Now, performance art is live work which includes elements, which is outside the boundaries of traditional theater, dance, and music. But it can contain elements of all three. A cynic might say, I chose performance art because it requires no particular talent. And there's some truth to that. My first piece was at the Fletcher Free Library. It was about the moving black dot and the grinning idiot. Although the heat of history was mentioned in passing, I did not touch upon wandering with turf-cutting instruments. For the next 10 years, I was moderately successful. I performed in London, Montreal, Boston, New York, and at the International Performance Art Festival in Cleveland, Ohio. I won some grants and fellowships and was featured on the cover of Vanguard Press, precursor of 7 Days. There was also an article about me in U.S. Air's In-Flight magazine. I know. In 1990, Burlington's City Council named April 1st Grinning Idiot Day. After that, my career began to peter out. Fewer and fewer people came to my shows. In desperation, I created a new piece. I rehearsed it. I did publicity. I invited my friends, and I performed at the Unitarian Church just across the street. I was humiliated when only 4 people showed up. I thought my friends had stayed away on purpose. So I stopped doing performance art, and I felt like a failure. Years later, The Moth was on the radio, and first-person narratives became popular. I entered a storytelling slam at Arts Riot, and I was confident I would win because autobiographical storytelling was part of my performance artwork, and I was a pro. I did not win. I tried a few more times at Monkey House, former home of Storytelling Vermont, and I lost again. But I did receive some encouragement. So I decided I had to reinvent myself as a storyteller. I spent hours and hours walking through the streets of Winooski practicing my stories. I've been a regular here at Storytelling Vermont for the past couple of years, and it's wonderful to be part of such a warm and welcoming community. And I'm so grateful that here at Storytelling Vermont, I've been given a second chance as a performer and storyteller. Thank you.
So nice. It was so nice. Peter Burns, one more time. I'd love to bring up Richard GAGNE from Dismas House, one of the directors, who is going to share a story for you. Even the title sounded intriguing, and also give us a little lens into the work that they do. So please welcome Richard.
Thank you. Yeah, so I thought I would give my story a title. I decided on calling it How I Made My Way to Winooski and Learned to Love the Winooski PD. So, but you know, I've been involved with Dismas since we started in 1986, so I've been there basically forever. Our location in the Burlington area is on Buell Street, so really just a very short walk away from here. A number of years ago, we decided to do a video, and we interviewed one of the folks who was living at the house. And in that interview, one of the things that he said I thought was like the most profound thing I had heard. He said, or at least in terms of understanding, you know, somebody coming out of prison. He said, when I came to Dismas House, I felt like I was coming to a regular house in a regular neighborhood, but I wasn't a regular person, right? So the experience of incarceration is one of alienation, of feeling like you're an outcast, you're a reject. And so people coming out of prison, they have a bunch of things that they need. They need a place to live. They need to find employment, and but they also need acceptance. And that's one of the things that we try to do at Dismas House. And we do that by creating a kind of community that involves the people living in the house, the former prisoners living in the house, the students who might be living in the house, creating community with each other, and also by having volunteer cooks coming, because we eat dinner together like a family might do, so we create this sense of a family community at the house. And so through those kind of relationships, then a person who's coming out of jail enters into a relationship, you know, with a student or the volunteer. The volunteer like Alec and his wife and his family, actually, I should say, they're volunteers. So they come once a month. They show up every, what night of the month is it? Okay, every first Friday. Their family shows up. And as soon as they walk in their door, they're communicating something really important to the norms that live in the house. And that is, I care enough about you that I'm going to be in relationship with you. I accept you, right? So that's the opposite message of incarceration, which is you're no good and we reject you. So that's the struggle of people coming out of prison. And in some ways, it's our struggle, too, for an organization that is serving a group like that. So in the mid-2000s, we had a super long waiting list. And it took people would have to wait in jail 6 to 8 months just to get a bed to come and live at Dismas House. Can you imagine that? Spending an extra 6 to 8 months in jail just to wait to find a place to get out. So we thought it would be really great if we could find another place to open up in Burlington or in the area. Now, the city officials in Burlington, they said, you know, we really love Dismas. We love having you here, but, you know, you're already in Burlington. Maybe it would be great if you could find a place in one of the other towns or cities around Burlington, right? So we tried. So we tried to find a location in South Burlington. And when some of the city officials found out what we were doing, it was like, hell no, you know, we don't want you, right? So we experienced some kind of rejection ourselves. So we thought, well, let's keep looking. So we found a place in Colchester near St. Mike's. And we thought this would be a good place. But again, the same thing happened. At first, the city officials, they were supportive, but, you know, there were folks in the neighborhood that really, you know, had a few things to say to some of the officials, and they said, well, I'm sorry, we can't support this anymore. So around the same time that this is going on, where we're getting all this rejection, the police chief in Winooski, Chief McQueen, and another official from Winooski, they called me up. And they said, hey, can we come and meet with you? I said, sure. So they come over to the house, and they said, we came over because we want to see if you can open a Dismas House in Winooski, right? So they recruited us. and they followed through. Yeah, they made good. And so in 2008, we opened a house in Winooski. And, you know, and it really started by the Winooski police chief giving me a phone call. So then fast forward about 10 years. And, you know, as I mentioned, we have, we do evening meals at the house. So we're always interested in having volunteer cooks come. And so one day, the new chief of police in Winooski, Rick Hebert, he gives us a call and says, hey, I and some of our officers, we would like to come to Dismas House and be volunteer cooks. So we want to be the ones to come and say to folks living in the house, hey, I care enough about you. I'm going to come and spend this time with you because we accept you and we want to support you, right? So amazing thing. So the day comes, they come over to the house. They, you know, with the meal that they fixed, there were 5 officers that came, and you know, so you know, we serve family style. I serve all the food, and then it's kind of, as the house director, I kind of figure it's my job to make sure that there's going to be some conversation at the table. So I said, so what about those muscle cars you guys drive? What's up with that? And so we had this really neat conversation about, you know, police driving muscle cars, and, you know, it's like, and how do you like them compared to driving the old Crown Vics that you used to drive and stuff? And it's not so much that I remember, you know, their answers to that question, but we had this great conversation. But then at one point, one of the police lieutenants said, you know, one of the important reasons why we came here is that it's really important for us to be accepted by you, right? So he's talking to a table full of people coming out of prison. They wanted to be accepted by them and to be seen as just a regular person. And when that happened, I thought, that's it, right? That's perfect. Thank you.
One more time for Richard. Richard, you're a natural. That was moving. I was like hanging on every word. Thank you for telling that story. If at any point tonight you find yourself feeling like, wow, I want to know more about how maybe these first Fridays or how I can be involved or be part of this work, feel free to come talk to Alec or talk to Richard here. Or Kimberly here is one of the directors as well, and just introduce yourself. We're going to keep things moving. We have a few more storytellers for you this evening, and I have not seen her yet, but her name is on the list. Carrie, are you here? There she is. It's so dark. Please welcome Carrie Ray Shamel.
Thank you. All right. Hey everybody, so my name's Carrie Ray, and I wanted to tell a story about second chances. So I think at any point in somebody's life, they want to be a celebrity, whether it be a local celebrity, a town celebrity, or a worldwide celebrity. I think it's something to aspire to, or at least maybe that's in my hopes and dreams. So a few years ago, my husband and I had the wonderful opportunity of traveling to Italy, and we stayed in the Piedmont region, which I would describe being like you'd picture Tuscany, but many less tourists and many less Americans, which is a win-win in my opinion. So we stayed at a vineyard. It was an agroturismo, so a vineyard that allowed people to stay there. And I remember driving up to the vineyard on this rolling hill, and we get to the vineyard, and there's the little hotel area you stayed in, and then the home where the family lived who owned the vineyard. And the woman who owned the vineyard came out running to greet us. Her name was Annalisa. And she promptly told us that any of the wine left in the tasting room at the end of the day, we were allowed to drink, which to our excitement, we got nicely drunk that night on the veranda of the hotel. And so it was a beautiful, beautiful location, just rolling hills and vineyards everywhere you could look. So the next morning we were out and about just exploring the area, and we came back around lunch back to the place we were staying. And to my surprise, at the house that the folks own, I saw this older woman, quite older, elderly in fact, reaching out one of the windows and just handing out plates of food to Annalisa and her children and her husband and anyone who worked on the vineyard, which is a very touching moment. So when I saw Annalisa later in the day, I said, "Who was that old lady like passing out the food?" And she said, "Oh, that's my granny." She said, "My granny grew up in this vineyard. It, was generationally owned families and families owned it, and granny just likes to contribute. She's 91, but she still does her part." I've always loved old people. So I said to Annalisa, I said, "Can I interview your granny?" And she had this look of like shock and awe on her face. She's like, "You want to interview my granny?" Like, it was just a very odd request for one of her innkeepers. So she's like, "Well, let me ask her." And so I was really excited. I was like, wow, this would be so interesting to interview this old woman who lives in Italy. So the next day came, and we went about on a little hike in the Italian countryside, and I never saw Annalisa that day. And we stayed another night. I think we probably got drunk again on the free wine there. And the next day we woke up, and it was the last day. We were leaving that morning, and we got up and we went into the breakfast room where it was just, you could fill yourself up for the day. There was all sorts of fruits and Italian cakes and cheeses and the best espresso I've ever had. And we'd already packed up our room, and I said to my husband, I was like, "Oh, I guess I missed my chance to interview Granny. I was so excited." And he's like, "Oh, well, next time." Okay, that was like 10 years ago. Like, we seldom went back to Italy. So next time I was like, no, it's really sad. When all of a sudden Annalisa comes running in the room, and she saw us, and her face lit up, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad you haven't left." And I was like, "Oh, okay, we're still here." She said, "Granny would love to be interviewed by you if you're still interested." And I was like, "Oh, very much so." She's like, "Yesterday, Granny spent all this time. She got her hair done. She pulled out her best dress. She was calling all of her relatives and friends saying, 'An American girl wants to interview me.'" So we came out of the breakfast room, and there comes Granny down the stairs wearing a very nice dress. Her hair is all curled and like some big earrings. And, I think she has a little cane. And we go in the tasting room, and she didn't speak a word of English. So her granddaughter, Annalisa, had to translate for her. But about 2 hours later, I learned about like her crushing grapes with her feet, and her husband going off in the war and having a really hard time coming back, having to hitchhike and take multiple trains, and what it was like to see the wine industry change. It was just really, really touching. And so Annalisa sent us off with a bottle of special wine that was named after her grandmother that I still haven't drank. And Annalisa and I ended up keeping in touch. I actually got one of her wines imported here to Daedalus, a plug for the wine shop Daedalus. And we'd email and send each other Christmas cards. And I'll never forget the day that she emailed me and said, "I'm really sorry to tell you this, Carrie Ray, but my granny has passed away at the age of 94. But thank you so much for giving her that day. She talked about it for her remainder years. Thank you for making her a celebrity for that one day. So I think that was her second chance to be a celebrity. So thank you.
Carrie Ray, one more time. It's so nice. Who in here has ever sat with somebody and just heard their story? Yeah? Clapping is an interesting reaction. I was just curious. Okay, by louder applause, who has ever been interviewed or had someone ask them about themselves? Who's ever had that experience? Yeah, you can clap if you want. I'm just curious. That was not meant to be like it's just falling apart. I just wanted to acknowledge what a cool thing that is by making one of you win over the other. Anyway, all right. You threw me off, Rich, by clapping. I love it. We have a few more storytellers, and we have a first-timer coming up on deck. First, we're going to have one of our regulars. She is a staple here at Storytelling Vermont, and we always look forward to what she has to share. Please welcome Lisa Cannon.
So I feel like I need to start my story tonight with a little bit of a note. When I heard the introduction about the great work that Dismas House does and the content of their work, I kind of froze because my story happens to be this sort of tragic comic take on an experience that I had. And it includes would-be, let's say this. It includes people who were trying to commit a crime and police who were trying to stop them. And I just want to say that I hope that I don't cause any offense in telling this story. It was a quite amazing experience, and I learned a lot about humanity in it. So I just want to put that out there. So my work used to take me all over the world. And I had the good fortune of living in South Africa for about 5 years, not long after apartheid ended and Nelson Mandela became president. And it was just so fascinating because everything was turned upside down, everything. People were relearning the space that they lived in, the neighborhoods that they lived in, how to interact with each other. And I was fortunate enough to meet this wonderful white South African woman named Desiree. Now, her name was spelled like I thought Desiree. She was always quick to point out that, no, it's Desiree. And I was like, okay. And that sort of tells you a lot about who she is. She was just this very exacting, specific, strong woman. But she was also just like so fun. And for my second year living in Johannesburg, which is at the time like the murder capital of the world, I got to live with her in her beautiful house, which, unlike all the other houses in the neighborhood, had absolutely no walls to the street. Every other house had big, high walls enclosing their gardens and their lawns. So right away, I thought, this is really cool. And she kind of lived her life very openly, and she dealt with people of all races, people from different countries, people like me coming and going. And it was a beautiful space. There were koi ponds in the front and gardens, and she was a masseuse too, so it was just like the whole package was amazing. And I'm grateful to her for that second chance, because my first living experience in Johannesburg was quite strange. It was kind of hard to even know how to find a place to live, because it was a society where, people stayed within their family. Certain races of people weren't really allowed to literally move anywhere else. And so this notion of someone coming in from the outside and looking for a flat was really kind of foreign to most people. So somehow or another, I heard about what they called a granny flat. It was attached to a rather large house on a small mountain in the middle of the city. And it was actually only a few blocks away from Mandela's house, so that was kind of cool. I used to get to go on my walks and go, hey, Madiba, that was his affectionate name. You know, he had big walls around his house, so it's not like I saw him, but I would just wave. So one day I am in this house and I've got the windows open. It was a nice spring night. I'm playing my music. I don't know what I was doing, maybe even dancing. I was alone a lot and I was kind of bored. So all of a sudden I look and I'm startled to see two guns being pointed in the window. Now, luckily there was a little bit of this sort of fancy iron grill work, but still, you know, the guns could fit through that. And I sort of startled, and the two men holding the guns said, "It's okay, madam. We are security." And I said, "Then why are you pointing the guns at me? I haven't done anything." They had a really limited command of English. Their native language was Zulu, and so I heard them talking back and forth. And I always try and assume the best of people, but I started getting really worried when they went around to the front door, which was the only entrance in and out of the flat, and started trying to break the very pathetic little lock. So my mind went into, okay, what do I do now? And I closed my bedroom door, which didn't fully close. So I closed it, and then I kind of used my body to kind of prop it shut. And I realized that was the only way in and out. So I just felt like kind of a sitting duck. The only thing I could think of to defend myself was an iron. Afterwards, one of my South African friends said, "Did you at least plug it in?" I'm like, "No." So I'm standing there, sort of crouched on the floor, trying to hold the door shut with the iron in one hand and a phone in the other. And I call the police. And the policeman answers, and I tell him what's going on. And he says, "Uh-huh. And I said, "So can you send someone?" "No, madam, I'm very sorry." I said, "Why not?" And he said, "I would really love to help you, but we only have one car, and the captain has it out right now." So I'm like, oh my God. So then, luckily, I thought to call Desiree. And man, oh man, was that the right choice. Called her, and I told her what had happened, and she said, "Oh, for Christ's sake, call him back and tell him I'm going to go pick him up and that they should wait outside." So she did. She, all business, get in, you guys, da-da-da. And she pulls up in front of my house. By this time, the guys who were right at the window I don't know where they are, but they're not right there anymore. So I sort of reopen the window. And I hear them ringing the bell very politely. And I hear her saying, "For God's sake, you idiots! Climb the wall! Nobody's gonna come open the door for you!" And then I hear them sort of talking back and forth, and then I hear her say, "One of you stand there and put your hands like this, and the other one, put your foot in and climb over the wall." So they do finally get over the wall, and they very tentatively look around, and at that point, we can't really see hide nor hair of the security guys. So, but I felt uneasy staying there. I was the only one on the property. Everybody else was away. It was a holiday. And so Desiree took one look at me and said, "Go get your stuff. You're coming to live with me." And I was forever grateful to have that second chance. Thank you.
A second chance for Lisa Cannon. One more time. And Desiree, what a wonderful character. So that's what's so great about telling stories is you get through that first painful couple of seconds or minute, and then you realize like we're all here, we all have our own experiences. So if anything about tonight has jarred loose for you the thought, what would it be like to tell a story? I apologize about the phrasing. There's no way to talk about this without sounding like I'm talking about poop the whole time. If you want to unburden yourself of your secrets. So we have another teller. This person is also from Dismas House and is so brave to come up and join us. Please welcome Marissa to the stage to tell us a story.
Hi, my name's Marissa. I am a student living at the Burlington Dismas House on Buell Street, and it's my first time telling a story, so it's exciting. So I moved into Dismas House at the end of August, right before school started, and Kim, who's the house director on Buell Street, told me if I moved in that I can go on this camping trip with both the Buell Street house and the East Island house in Winooski, and she said if I moved in on this Friday, I could go with them. It would be like a good-ish way to get to know the house. And so I decided that that was going to be the easiest way for me to get to know the people in the house, which she later told me she was very surprised that I went and that it was a little bit out-of-the-box experience to not know anybody and to go on a weekend camping trip. But so we left on a Friday, and I was moving in on that same Friday. And I went with a friend to move into my house, and I drove up to the house, and there was all these people in the driveway, like, screaming so loudly, which I'm now very used to, but I was not used to when I was first moving in. And I drove by the house and was like, I should pull in the driveway and I should move my stuff in. And I got really freaked out and I didn't want to do it. I didn't know anybody, so I just like drove around the block and went home. And I moved in later after everybody had already left. And so I moved in when nobody was there, and I went on the camping trip, and I spent the weekend in somewhere on a lake. I don't remember. Oh, Kettle Pond. That's where we went. And on the last day, on Sunday morning, we brought fresh water to make coffee with and to cook with and stuff, so we'd have clean water. And on the last morning, it was like the last bit of water that we could use to make coffee and tea or whatever. And somebody was boiling it in a hot water machine, and I used the last bit of it to make coffee because I really wanted some coffee. And one of the guys in the house, Jimmy, for those of you who know him, that was his last cup of coffee that I was unaware of. And so I was pouring the hot water into my cup to make some coffee, and he came like running in, his like deep, raspy voice, like, who the hell is using my water to make coffee? That's mine. I wanted it. And I was like, I just wanted a cup of coffee. Like, I didn't know. And he's yelling and saying that he wanted that cup of coffee. And obviously he was joking, but I offered to give it to him. He's like, no, it's too late now. It's too late now. I'm just going to have to go drink pond water, and I'll get sick, and it's going to be all your fault, and I hate you. I was like, okay. Great way to be introduced into the house. And so I drank the cup of coffee. He did not have any and just was rambling on about it for the next week. But luckily, about a week later, he got over it and said that we could be friends and gave me a second chance at a lovely friendship that I've now had the pleasure of having for the past 3 months. Thank you.
Yes, one more time for Marissa. There you are. So one cool thing is that if you are a first-time storyteller here at Storytelling VT, we have a button for you. It says STVT. That's our logo, our abbreviation. That's a way for you to remember tonight and for us to just thank you for your courage. So Annie, Marissa, and Richard, I know you'll be getting a button. Jen, our producer in the back, has them. So there they are. Yes. Yeah, there's no formal ceremony. It's sort of a distributing. So I had an interesting experience a few weeks ago. I'm a speaker. I speak in schools, and last month I got a chance to speak in a middle school, and it's not often. I'm typically working on college campuses, but I got this chance to speak in a middle school, and it was in Hardwick. And I had to leave really early. It's like a almost 2-hour drive from Burlington. And not quite, hour and a half. I might have been going slow. And I started really early, so it was dark out. And I'm driving to the school, and I do this little thing. I'm just going to be really honest with you. I call it the pen trick. What you do is you take a pen, and you put it in your mouth, put it all the way back in there, and it simulates a smile. And it confuses your brain. It gives your brain this confidence. It gives you this sense of like calmness and everything's going to be okay. I mean, years into being a speaker, I still struggle at times, like anybody, with, I hope this goes well and I hope this is useful for the students. So I was doing the pen trick, as I've done many times before, and it was so dark and it was on the highway, and I had this pen in my mouth, and then I tasted like this metal. And it was not metal. It was deep blue ink. And the way that I know that is because I could feel it on my hand, and I turned on I could just see in the tiny shred of sunlight, I could see blue ink on my hand. And that was bad because it would not come out, right? But I was like, what's worse is it's on my face. And I don't know how bad it is, right? And I'm on the highway, I'm doing, a high enough speed. I mean, I can't pull off. So I had this idea, I'm gonna swish some water in my mouth to at least like dilute the ink. So I get a mouthful of water, and now I'm like, well, cool, I'm doing 75. I can't spit it out of the window. So I'm effectively marinating my teeth in blue ink water. And I'm like 7 miles from an exit. So I just held it in my mouth for 7 miles. I got off the exit, and I went to that rest stop in Waterbury, and I just like walked in. I just tried not to make eye contact, with people. I was like, this is so bad. It's like I have ink all over my face. And I spent some time with like the harshest hand soap you can imagine. Not hand soap, just like industrial grade Comet, just on my face. And it was just ironic to me, I think, like going to a middle school as an adult with a job. Like I was invited there. I was going to be the speaker. People were going to clap for me. And I was like, this is as bad as it was to be in middle school. It's nice to reconnect to that sometimes. I share that story with you also because I think it illustrates one of the recurring challenges I've had in my work, which is there's something about being a speaker or being on stage where you feel like you're supposed to be perfect. And even though you're not, you can't be, you get caught in this trap all the time, and you feel like you have to hide your flaws and hide your weaknesses. And it's one of the hardest things about my job is that I feel so flawed and so clueless so much of the time, and yet I have to get up there and try to offer some truth. And I just feel like, what a visual, like if you could see me before I got on stage, covered in ink in a rest stop bathroom, just dreading what's about to happen. And so the second chance that I've been discovering recently is those moments when I'm invited out of the focus on me and into the focus onto the students that I work with. Sometimes when I travel to speak in schools, it's actually pretty isolating. I spend a lot of time in airplanes and in hotels and rental cars to get to some place in America where I'm going to talk for an hour and then I'm gone. And I made this GIF once. I spoke to an audience of 3,500 college students. And this GIF was an answer to the question, what does 3,500 college students look like 3 minutes after the speech is over? It's just this huge empty room. Like it's almost like you imagined it. Sometimes when I'm giving a speech and it's going well, I think I wish I could just like extend this a little bit longer before they all leave. So a few weeks ago, I'm at UMass, and I'm speaking to a group of students, and after the speech was over, they had some announcements, so I went and I sat with a group of students while they did announcements, and then the organizer dismissed everyone, and they all got up and they left, except for the students at my table. Instead, they introduced themselves to me. There was Andy from Seoul, and there was Ely from South Carolina, there was Andre, and there was this girl, Serbi, from New Delhi. And they started telling me their stories, what they were hoping to do in their life. And I just felt so connected and part of that moment. It was as good or better than anything I had been able to say in the hour previous. And that to me has become like my new truth. I feel like I've been reconnected with is this idea that I may go somewhere and talk for a long time, and the best thing that's going to be said is going to happen after the speech is over. And it won't be said by me. And so I feel like the second chance that I'm often given and often welcomed into is this idea to remember that it's not about me. I'm not the center of my universe. The center of my universe are the people around me and their stories and where they're headed, and I'm just lucky that I get to be a part of it, even when it includes rest stops on the side of Waterbury and scary drives in the dark. Thank you. Well, I just want to thank you all. It's what's so fun about storytelling is we take this word second chances, this theme, and we go in all different directions with it. And even though many of our stories were not about the work of Dismas, I want to make sure that we really recognize and appreciate and thank you all for reaching out to us and for including us in the work that you do tonight. This was, I think, an honor for all of us as well. One more time for Dismas House, for the volunteers, for the people that they serve, for the people who make it a special place. For our first-time storytellers, thank you for RETN, who gives voice to people in our community and does such meaningful work. Our next Storytelling VT, it's the first Tuesday of every month at 7:30 right here. So thank you all. I hope you have an amazing holiday season and you put other people at the center of your universe this month. Thank you so much. Have a good night.